There's something dark behind every adventure, something no one talks about. This is the story of when everything broke, her bike, body, and maybe her spirit as well. She calls her motorbike Alaska, and once they were inseparable, crossing continents, chasing horizons, carrying dreams through dust and storm. But in Tanzania, one misjudged rut changed everything. A crash in Mbeya, shattered collarbone, and a punctured lung. She couldn't lift her bike, couldn't ride anymore. Lying under the sun, waiting for help, she faced what fans never see: pain, fear, and silence. Back in the Netherlands, healing while Alaska waited oceans away, the question lingered. What if this time I can't come back? Because riding is more than just freedom, it's fragility. And in this video, we are going deep into that fragility. Her story begins in more humble and desperate places. The money she earned in Australia as a geologist, banks running dry, nights with no place to sleep and hunger. She sold her house, possessions, and her previous life to chase something deeper. She traded stability for uncertainty and reached a point where she was jobless, homeless, with nothing but conviction. It takes an enormous leap, but that leap does not erase fear. It does not erase imposter syndrome, and the quiet panic when you realize you're farther away from help than you ever imagined. Corruption is a shadow that trails her, like exhaust smoke. In Nigeria, on the Monia Isayan Road, in exchange with police who openly demanded money. She recorded that incident, and later the officers were dismissed. The public pressure forced their hand. But think, how many times have local people faced the same demand and had no camera, audience, and no ability to force accountability? Her camera becomes both a shield and a sword, but also a burden, to expose and then to reckon with who is threatened, angered, and who resents her presence. Does she ever feel the weight of that? Does she worry when she films someone asking for a bribe about reprisals, not just from corrupt officials, but from systems that prefer silence? Sometimes the physical toll is visible, but sometimes the mental is not. She has admitted in interviews she cuts out many of the worst moments: illnesses, doubt, fear, and regret. You see sunsets, kindness from strangers, and smiles. But very few of the nights she cried alone in a hotel room, missing home and comfort. The times she wondered whether she had made mistakes, wrong route, trusts, and wrong assessment of risk. The times she considered stopping, and the times she doubted her own story was worth the cost. When the screen turns black and the applause of the internet fades, all that remains is her heartbeat and the soft hum of her bike cooling down. She checks the comments, sometimes smiling or sometimes shrinking at the harshness of strangers who dissect her every move. It's a strange sort of companionship, millions of people watching her, yet no one is really there. She once said that the hardest part of riding alone is returning each night to nobody. That ache doesn't fit into thumbnails or travel vlogs, but it's real, and it travels with her like an invisible passenger. Even the financial side is a thrill and a risk. She earns via YouTube ads, merchandise, sponsorships, brand deals. As of 2025 estimates, her net worth is roughly $845,600 with yearly incomes possibly up to $1 to $1.2 million when everything aligns. But the expenses grow right along: shipping bikes, spare parts, repairs, visas, airfares, not to mention but also recovery from injury. One bad crash can wipe out months of income. One mechanical failure in a remote place can cost far more than the parts themselves. It can cost time, safety, and morale. Then there's the invisible friction, the judgments. Viewers who see risk and call it recklessness. Comments that critique what she should have done. The misogynistic tones that assume danger is amplified just because she's a solo female traveler. The pressure not to show that you're afraid, because fear could undermine audience trust, sponsorships, and your sense of identity. She must always ride, post, and move forward. Even when inside, part of her wants to stay still, fix, heal, and rest. On Reddit, the conversations about itchy boots are a mirror of how divided the internet can be. Some threads overflow with admiration, people calling her brave, meticulous, and inspiring. Others turn cynical, claiming she over-edits her videos, uses hidden guides, or dramatizes risk for clicks. There are long discussions about whether her routes are as solo as she claims, whether her production team sometimes steps in, or whether sponsorship money quietly alters her independent image. In some subreddits, fans defend her fiercely, reminding skeptics that editing doesn't erase courage. Yet, scrolling through it all, you sense how public figures like her no longer own their own stories. Reddit picks them apart until even sincerity starts to look staged. And that, perhaps, is the hardest battle, not against the roads or the weather, but against constant doubt from an audience that demands proof of every bruise. There are moments when the line between adventure and survival blurs, when motorbike breakdown is not an exciting challenge, but desperate wait. Border crossing is not cultural exchange, but interrogation, and when kindness of strangers is a lifeline. In West Africa, she's described how visa costs pile up, hotels are basic and expensive, roads disappear in the rain, and border checkpoints often demand bribes. She has to choose a route not because she wants beauty, but because certain roads could mean being stranded, highway thieves, and mechanical failures with no support. Every decision is a risk calculation, and then the question of consequence. What parts of her journey are being shaped by what will get clicks? The dramatic danger, protest, crash, and the corruption exposés, these generate more views. Do they pull her toward areas of risk she might otherwise avoid? Does she sometimes amplify threats because tension sells? There is no clear answer, but it's human to wonder because when your livelihood depends in part on how edge of danger your footage appears, the temptation is real, to linger, expose, and escalate. Through all this, she remains magnetic because vulnerability shows up in cracks. Alaska shipped back home, her quiet tears in the hospital, sleepless nights, and the fear of permanent damage. Those moments she shares, rare though they are the ones that anchor the myth to flesh. Those are the moments when you believe Gnarly beyond just as an adventurer and more as a person. So what comes next for Gnarly, for Itchy Boots? Maybe the next chapter will be less about proving endurance and more about preserving it. Slower routes, deeper storytelling, and more reflection than adrenaline. In the quiet months off the road, she learned what stillness feels like. The strange ache of not moving, watching others chase horizons while she stood still. It gave her time to look back at the years she spent measuring life in miles, and to realize that sometimes growth doesn't come from distance traveled, but from the pause between journeys. She's hinted at exploring new continents, maybe returning to South America, or even tracing the Silk Road in reverse. But her tone has softened. The rush for views has given way to something quieter. Meaning, sustainability, and gratitude. Fans speculate whether she'll start mentoring other writers, write a second book, or even create a documentary series. Whatever road she chooses, it feels like a shift is coming, from survival to legacy. Here is something to hold. If the line between truth and storytelling is sometimes blurred, that's not always bad. Humans always tell stories that way. But what if more of the story were shown? What if we saw not just her braveries, but her doubts, regrets, and more moments of, I should have turned back? Would that make her less admirable or more human? Because the greatest tragedy might be not in the risks she undertakes, but in the parts she loses to the road. Rest, friendship, health, and time. The road demands so much, and sometimes the road takes more than it gives. In the end, maybe the real story of Itchy Boots is about a woman who dared to exchange certainty for curiosity, who turned solitude into company, and kept moving even when the camera stopped. The scars, silence, and endless roads, they're all part of the same confession. That freedom always costs something. She rides on, a little bruised, wiser, carrying the same restless heart that first set her wheels in motion. And somewhere between the hum of her engine and the world rushing by, she's still chasing, but this time not the fame or any kind of validation, but peace.